You have reached the deepest depths of the internet. If it is greatness you seek, you've come to the wrong show. If it's about not wasting time, don't worry, you're never going to get your time back. If it's knowledge you seek, just be aware, any knowledge gained here is going to be minuscule. So now it's time for Accost with Tony Gerdeman on the Ozone Radio Network.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to a very special edition of Accost Field. Today we are dealing with the NFL Draft. Welcome, everybody. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr and our producer Shannon Sommers. Shannon, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing just great. Nothing but technical difficulties.
That's what people tune in for. Tom, how are you?
I'm glad all the technical difficulties are Shannon's problem.
Yeah, that's usually how it goes. And this episode today, we are joined by Kyle Morgan of No Huddle Scouts, at No Huddle Scouts on Twitter. Kyle, how's it going?
I'm doing well. Hopefully I'm not your technical difficulty.
We'll see.
It's early.
Yeah, at some point, everybody is. So today what we're doing is an Ohio State-themed draft show. We'll touch a little bit into the Browns because we have some crossover and because everybody loves comedy. Then maybe take a little bit of a look towards 2019 and some of the Buckeyes that are going to be leaving or looking to be leaving. But first, I think everybody believes or expects that the first Buckeye off the board will be cornerback Denzel Ward. And Tom, we should have gotten a clue to that even back in, 2016 when Ward was rotating with Marshawn Lattimore and Garyon Conley. And anytime Harry Combs was, somebody would say something about Ward being a backup or Ward being lesser, he would get really upset with people and say, I'm not going to put somebody out there who isn't as good as the other two. So when Denzel Ward is as good as Garyon Conley and Marshawn Lattimore as a sophomore, that's a pretty good sign that you've got yourself a future NFL first rounder.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, we've talked about this a little bit recently with in relation to like Jeff Okudah and Shaun Wade potentially this fall. If you're out there, in your first year or even in your second year and getting meaningful rotation minutes as a corner, that's a pretty good indication you have a pretty good chance to be a first rounder if you can do that at Ohio State.
I know some of the concern has been with his height, measured in around 5'10". Kyle, why is that not much of a concern to the scouts and to the teams that are looking at him?
In my opinion, it's because he's the complete package. It's the combine season, I guess you can call it. They love to knock the height, the measurables. That's an easy knock on people when they don't come in at that perfect, 6'1.5" and 200 pounds, but for him, he's the best man cover guy arguably in the draft. He's tremendous in zone coverage, and he's physical. And, you got to have that run support option. I think we're all huge fans of Antoine Winfield, and that's kind of that mold of what you want from that position. And what did he measure in at?
5'4".
5. Yeah, it seemed like it, right? But I mean, he's probably maybe 5'9", 5'10".
Maybe 5'9". He's probably 5'8" and some eighths.
Yeah, and he could bring it. So scouts are willing to look past that 100% height weight threshold if you can play and be multifaceted.
Because he's looking at like top 10 type of range. Can you take a guy that high and does he start out as a nickel corner like Bradley Roby did, or do you automatically have to put him outside?
For this high, I mean, you're talking top 10.
Right.
I don't know that you draft that high to play somebody at nickel, especially the teams. I mean, Bradley Roby went to Denver. They had a pretty good secondary already. So you're looking at, who are some teams interested? Maybe Chicago, Tampa, teams along those lines. So he's going to start outside right away. And honestly, that's his strength. He's got the speed. You want those guys on the outside.
Tom, do you think maybe there's a danger in drafting Denzel Ward because he targets too much?
There are college refs in the NFL, right? That's as long as there's not Big Ten officials in the NFL, I don't anticipate that being a huge issue.
Well, and I can't imagine a Big Ten official ever reaching the professional ranks of anything, really.
Even professional college reffing.
Nope, not even that. The other corner that everybody likes, or one of the others, is Josh Jackson out of Iowa. And he's a guy who, Kyle, is that prototype, 6 foot, 6'1", 190, 200. Had some really huge games, including the one against Ohio State. I get nervous about a guy who was a wide receiver and then comes out of nowhere to be this outstanding defensive back. But then I just realized I just described Chris Gamble.
Well,
is there a date? I mean, do you like him, Josh Jackson?
In the right scheme, I do. I wouldn't want him on a man cover specific team, but you put him in the right situation where he can play a little bit off man,
cover two
or zone. Yeah. Then he's that guy because you want his ball hawking skills out there. He's the best in the draft in that particular trait. So, he's to me worth every bit of a mid first round pick, even with only 1 year as a starter. And we've seen that history. I mean, you mentioned Chris Gamble, but we've seen, even in a different position with Malik Hooker, sometimes it's just your opportunity. And he's only a junior. So, in theory, he could have another year of starting and dominating and all that, but he'll be fine, even with the position change and relatively young still.
Do the Browns play man coverage? Would he be a fit there or no?
Browns could use any help they get. So
let's not start this already. We got a long show to go.
If we're going to go there, obviously not at 4. So you're talking, do the Browns trade that 4th pick, and trade down a bit?
You're already thinking that's what my mock draft is going to have. So that's why I'm asking before I look like an idiot and put it out there.
But can we have somebody else in the AFC North take JT Barrett for starter, so that way he can have a couple of interceptions?
No, I've actually got Barrett going to the Browns as well, but that's a story for another day. They need winners. They need players who know how to win. That's why in my mock draft, it's basically the Browns selecting from all of the major college football programs.
Why is Pepper still on the team?
Well, that was last year. This is a brand new era. One of those guys who is a winner and has been in control of the Ohio State offensive line is Billy Price. Kyle, you actually got to talk to him out at where did you talk to him?
Actually just got off a text message with him a few minutes before we started.
So he's on track. He's going to be fine. He's going to be healthy. But what do you think of? He's a very mature guy, very confident guy, and he feels like to me like a sure thing in this draft.
Absolutely, and especially with his versatility. So I think when you factor all that in, he could come in and play guard. He could learn the league. He could learn the system. He could play guard, have a little bit less responsibility. And then, you could kind of slide him over to center then once he's ready and be a great fit. And so that's going to give those teams the versatility, not only from a scheme standpoint, but also roster management. If you got a veteran with 1 year left on a contract at center, and I'm thinking of New Orleans right now, that's somebody he could come in, play guard, and then take over next year. So he's set himself up. Set himself up very well for longevity in the league.
Tom, are you with me on that? Like Pat Elflein, I felt like was a sure thing, even though I think he was a second rounder. But just these guys that we see all the time at Ohio State, just certain guys you fully expect to succeed at the next level.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you are asking me which of these guys in this Ohio State draft class is most likely to play 100 career NFL games, or whatever number you want to pick that's sort of in that area, I would go with Billy Price. He seems like the kind of guy who's going to have, barring some kind of a catastrophic injury, he's going to have like an 8-year, 10-year NFL career and be very good wherever they put him on the interior of the line. He started as a guard. He was good at Ohio State as a guard. They moved him to center. He won the Remington Award. He can play, he can play anywhere in there. And with NFL teams, I mean, how many linemen do they travel for a game? Like 8? I mean, positional versatility is huge for them. So a guy who can play potentially all 3 of those interior line positions, even if he's, not starting the first year, and I kind of assume he probably could, but even if he's not starting the first year, that's still a huge asset for an NFL team. So yeah, I think if you want to talk about someone that the Browns could pick, if you want the Browns to pick a Buckeye, which, I know we're not living in reality when we're talking about the Browns picking Buckeyes, but, Kyle, is he someone that could be available, first pick of the second round, or you think he's going earlier than that?
I think so. I think his range is probably late first to late second. And I had late second just because I didn't know the update on his injury. But just hearing from him today, it sounds like he's going to be 100% ready to go by training camp. And that he's way ahead of schedule. So that shouldn't affect him, especially with his history. Durability is not his weakness. He's a school record holder and game started here. So, but yeah, absolutely. If you're looking at picks, I think the Browns have 33 and 35, somewhere around there. So absolutely, he should be there. But you never know. Somebody like New Orleans, Minnesota, teams of that nature that might scoop him.
Well, and I saw you tweet something today, like somebody was saying, like, you don't draft Billy Price and then you don't draft him in the first round or whatever and put him at guard. But I mean, this is a guy who was a 3-year starter at guard, an All-American at guard. Just because he played really, really well at center this past year doesn't mean he couldn't also be a very, very good guard. I definitely think there's value in there. If you need an interior lineman, you need a guard, grab him. And then, because we see the length of a career in the NFL, you're always looking to upgrade. Everybody's always looking to upgrade. If somebody gets too expensive, then they're a cap casualty and you got to let them go, and then you just slide somebody else in. So yeah, I'm with you. I think there's value all over the place for Billy Price, and he could be one of those guys, first guy off the board, maybe in the second round. If somebody doesn't decide that they don't want to wait, and you want that value, you just go and grab him.
I don't think the Browns are going to take him, and it's not anything against him, but I think in all actuality, the Browns right now, they don't need an interior lineman. They need an outside lineman. They need a left tackle, especially with Joe Thomas retiring. I think having too many interior linemen is not going to help them as far as the situation that they have needing the left tackle spot shored up.
Well, I think, are they thinking about moving the right tackle over to left tackle, which in my mock draft, I have them taking a tackle later with their last pick in the second round being Jamarco Jones.
Don't tease me.
He's but Kyle, the RAS score that you guys use inside the pylon, there is a thing saying like he is and it measures athleticism and things of that nature, and just all of these different measurables. And he was like the second lowest offensive lineman in years.
The only one he was better than, or he was right in the same category as Orlando Brown.
Yeah,
and we all know what kind of combine he had. So it's not looking good if you're just looking at the RAS score. His history states that once you're below that threshold, you're not going to pan out. So, now do you trust your tape and you trust his history of being rock solid, or are you looking at some, computer algorithm? So that's where tape versus analytics debate could be for another day.
Tom, you're an analytics guy because you like baseball, right?
I am.
And so if you have the score where nobody has ever, been good having this low of a range, do you keep them off your board, or which do you weigh more? Because tape with Jamarco Jones is fantastic. I mean, he's not the tallest guy, but he's solid. He was productive 2-year starter, and it was very, very good. You never worried about him. But that threshold of these numbers, I mean, where are you at on that?
Yeah, I am generally a trust the numbers person. I mean, I'm sure we will probably have a Josh Allen conversation at some point, and I have fairly strong feelings on Josh Allen, which, we can get into those later, based a lot on numbers. But with Jones, he was just, like you said, he was just always just reliable. He wasn't like amazing, but he played left tackle, and you never had to think about him. He was just there, and it was just, he kept the quarterback's blindside clean all the time. And as soon as he came out in the Iowa game, he was hurt in the Iowa game, and then immediately someone came in and went right around Josh Alabi at left tackle, who was filling in for him, and had a strip sack on JT Barrett. And it was like, oh yeah, that can happen. I forgot you can get beat on the left side of the line. Like I didn't remember that was a thing that could happen. He probably athletically, I don't think anyone is really thinking he's a left tackle in the NFL, but I mean, Kyle, he could play right tackle, right? And failing that, maybe you can slide him inside, or am I wrong on that?
Not completely wrong. I mean, that would be the hope that it's that easy, but if you guys follow Jeff Schwartz on Twitter, former Kansas City Chiefs offensive lineman, he talks about being that swing tackle and how that's coveted, but he compared it to basically wiping with your other hand. And, if you've ever broken a bone and been forced to do that, it can lead to some issues. So it's all a matter of how comfortable they can be, maybe starting with their left foot up, right foot back versus opposite, and how they shuffle in that. And if he's not very athletic to begin with, that might be a tough chore. So I think you'd hope that he can do that, but you might be pigeonholing him into that left side.
They have like the Wonderlic test. Are you suggesting a Wonder Wipe test?
That could be on the horizon.
When they say, "What did you get on your test?" I don't want to see the results of that one.
I have no idea what to do after that. So would you with that? Would you take him in a top? Because I had a scout tell me, wouldn't touch him until at least the first 4 rounds. Wouldn't be interested in him. Is where do you see him then? Where would you take him before then?
Now, if you're the Browns and you've got 12 picks and you've got, I think they have 3 second-round picks, mm-hmm. and no third but a fourth. So maybe you take him as a flyer on that third second-round pick.
Which is what my mock draft does. But now I think you've talked me out of it because you're saying he's never going to play in the NFL.
I'm just saying we don't know if he can wipe with his other hand.
Can you text him and ask? What hand are you texting with right now? Yeah, well, of course he is.
He's busy practicing. So, and I don't know if LaCharles Bentley can help him with that at all, but he is out here training.
I don't think anybody should help him with that. That's something you do on your own time.
You never know what happens in that lab down there. But so he was out here with Billy Price training. They skipped all the All-Star games, so he's committed. He's working on those little things to get better. And it's my understanding that he and Billy are going to come back after the draft and after their rookie mini camps and put in the work until the fall training camp.
It's interesting because, Tom, we're out there over at the Woody for interviews and stuff, and we always see the defensive guys come back. The defensive linemen are working there with Larry Johnson. linebackers are hanging out as well. But yeah, you're right. We don't see the offensive linemen so much out there working. But yeah, when you've got somebody like Charles, who is, legit and has connections to Ohio State like he has, I guess it's not much of a surprise. One of the guys that we have seen back was, I think we saw Sam Hubbard as the next guy I want to talk about. I've seen him in the first round, at the end of the first round. I wonder, Kyle, after he's running 4.8s and 4.9s, is that a bit lofty then to maybe expect him to hit that first round? Or do people look at the rest of his game? I mean, I know they do, but does that 4.8, 4.9 scare them away?
I think it depends on what you already have on your roster and where your plan is to play him. So if you want him as an edge rusher, probably not, because it probably just doesn't have that speed for that. But if you want him as a complement to somebody or somebody you can move around, then absolutely he's there. So he's a guy that plays faster than he's going to measure on a stopwatch. He can go sideline to sideline. And, if you remember what he was able to do against USC in the Cotton Bowl, they had him walking around the line of scrimmage. So you start thinking of teams that do that. Okay, Pittsburgh did that. The Rams are real creative in that capacity. Philadelphia does that. So he's going to be intriguing just based on versatility alone.
Tom, were you surprised at the 4.8s and the 4.9s? Because, the Jack linebacker, they'd started working on that in camp and talked about that. And they did have him move around. The way he against the run, he can beat running backs to the sideline and stretch plays out. I was surprised by how poorly he ran. I know he was too.
Yeah, that was a big surprise to me because you're right. And like Kyle said, he plays faster than that. And I would maybe attribute that to, he's obviously an incredibly smart guy. If you've just heard him talk, he's a finance major and he was interning at Goldman Sachs. He's a very, very smart kid. And I think he has a very high level of awareness and maybe can anticipate things a little bit. And maybe that helps him play a little bit faster than the stopwatch time. Because he seems like you said, he can stretch. You saw him get out, stretch running plays to the sidelines and stay in space with guys who were much smaller and should have been much faster than that. So yeah, that time was a surprise, but I don't know that I would necessarily, keep that from, treat that as the only, the final verdict on him. Cause I don't, you're not running 40 yards in a straight line very often as a defensive end. You know
what a great nickname for Sam Hubbard would be? Goldman Sachs.
Some of your best work right there. That's pretty good.
Good night, everybody.
I guess my issue with the 40 times is that, these guys are he's trying to add weight.
Yeah.
Or he's trying to work on certain technical things. And then you got some guys that are just training for track. Like all they need to do is prove that they can run a 40 and then they're gold. Goldman Sachs, however you want to use it. So maybe a guy like Sam Hubbard, who can be viewed as a tweener, just didn't have the time in the day to also train for track, So, take the 40 with a grain of salt.
Do you think he can do that, be a 3-4 outside linebacker?
Yes, I do. Absolutely. But I think I like him more in the LA Rams, how they do it, where they say it's an odd front, but it's basically just a stand-up edge guy. I think he'd do very well in that capacity.
The next guy I want to talk to is one of the guys who intrigues me the most, and that's Jalen Holmes, who I don't think he ever started a game at Ohio State. Maybe a couple this past year. Just always part of a rotation. Always just the most selfless guy on the defensive line, I think, other than the nose tackle or whatever. But as a guy who looks like prototypical defensive end, but gladly went inside to defensive tackle when they had injuries. He went to Larry Johnson, said, put me inside. I'll do whatever you need. And I've talked to him about that in the past, where do you do this? Do you think when you do this that the NFL will see this and see not only your versatility and your willingness to do whatever it takes? And he said he would hope that it would be noticeable. And so, Kyle, his versatility, does that, I guess, carry more weight than his lack of production, or does the lack, because he has, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 sacks in his career, I think. There's not a whole lot of production for all of his physical attributes, because he looks the part, but the stats aren't necessarily there.
One of the golden rules of scouting is traits over production. So, you can't always control what a guy's up against. So Jalen Holmes, for example, part of just a crazy deep rotation. So all those guys have struggled, putting up the gaudy stats. So absolutely, his versatility was way better than any stat line he could put up. With that said, I was able to see him in the Senior Bowl, and the coaching staff. I think he was being coached by Denver, if I remember correctly. Anyways, they want to put you in situations that maybe you didn't play in all year, so that they can really get a good understanding of you as a complete player. And so when he lined up outside against that talent there as a defensive end, he struggled. He was much more productive when he was inside, and he could use his length against some of the shorter guards and guys that have to operate in a small space. He was able to take advantage of that. So I like him more inside, but like you said, that versatility is going to be a huge factor in his draft stock.
Tom, what do you think of Jalen? It feels to me like he's just getting started, even though he's been at Ohio State 4 years.
He has always struck me as like a good makeup guy, like the kind of guy you want on your team, because he is going to just do whatever you need to help out in any given moment, and willing to play different spots, and willing to, like you said, kind of get out of his normal role because when you have a need. He strikes me as a kind of guy that's probably going to have I don't know how many games he's going to start, but he's probably going to have a pretty good 5-6 year career of being a contributor on a pretty decent team. Like if he's, I don't know that you're necessarily relying on him to be a 16 game a year starter somewhere, but I think he could be, in the right role, he could be a very effective role player for someone.
I remember the whole Senior Bowl stuff. He did not have a great week that week from just watching it on TV and watching what they were saying about him at that point. Kyle, so how much do you think that hurt him?
I think more along the lines of his coachability. He was getting yelled at quite a bit, but it was the fact that he couldn't correct a mistake after the first time. So now he's running through again and then again, and he's just not picking it up. And I don't know, does he have the smarts to improve and to be that versatile defender and kind of have all those roles down pat that he's going to be asked to do at the next level? Or is he just kind of an athlete that you stick out there and give him one task?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what Bill Belichick does, right? You find these guys who do one or two good things, 2 things well, and you let them do that. One of the actually, Tyquan Lewis was out there the Senior Bowl with Jalen Holmes and had a much better week, if I recall, and had a sack or 2 in the game itself. For me, he seems he always felt a little undersized for me, but then he measures in at like 6'4" and like 270 or whatever. And was a productive guy all the time. Defense, even splitting reps. Big 10 defensive lineman of the year. I think I have him going in the 4th round to the Browns because I am an expert on the Browns draft. But he's a guy that feels to me, Tom, like just a consistent guy, good for the team, maybe like a John Simon type.
That's not a bad comp. He ran well at the combine. He finished, I think it was a 4.69 in the 40, which, I mean, we just talked about how the 40 doesn't really matter for defensive ends, but still, that's impressive. But he also has the production. He ended his career with 25 and a half sacks, I think, at Ohio State. So, I mean, he's been productive over a long, the course, the long horizon at Ohio State. He has the athletic ability. I certainly like him more than Holmes at the next level. I don't, Kyle, do you think he's available at the end of the fourth round when Gerd has the Browns taking him? I would have guessed he would be maybe a third-ish rounder. Am I wrong on that?
I've got him as a third to fourth round, so I think you'll have to see how it falls, and just if there's a run on any particular position that's going to alter things. But I think that range is fair.
Do you think Holmes goes third out of those three then? Or does it just depend on, who needs what?
I think it's who needs what, but I like Lewis better than Holmes, personally. I think you're going to get a more steady player, whereas with Jalen Holmes, you might have some really great moments. You're also going to have some lows. And I think Tyquan's just kind of that steady plus wave. So,
yeah, I think you know what you're getting with Tyquan Lewis. You hope what you're getting with Jalen Holmes.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know these guys personally, but Tyquan seems very bright. He's got all the experience you could want coming into as a rookie. And he does things the right way. He's never a problem. So I think he's going to be just a really good, solid pro.
He was one of the leaders on the team last year, especially on the defensive side of the ball. After the Iowa game, when no one wanted to come out and talk, it was Urban Meyer who had to come out and talk, and it was Billy Price, who is Billy Price, and then the only other guy who came out was Tyquan Lewis. And I think everyone was kind of shell shocked then, but that is taking a leadership role, just little stuff like that. And day to day, he was obviously a leader in that locker room as well, but there's a lot of little stuff that he does that I think maybe makes him play up a little bit more, even from his on-field production, which was incredibly impressive.
And that's why I have the Browns taking him, because they need guys like that. Thank you, Tom. Somebody who I would not have the Browns taking is Jerome Baker, linebacker, who has tons of ability, was fairly really productive as a sophomore. Had similar numbers last year, but it wasn't as pleasing to the eye as the year before. And I'm kind of afraid of Baker because I think he relies too much on athleticism, and we've talked about this before. It might be meaningless, but whenever you and I have talked to him after a good game, bad game, doesn't matter. He's always got a smile on his face, and he's always in a good mood. And sometimes I just wanted to see him angry at times. Do you have the same concerns, or am I just as an NFL guy? I mean, where do you see him? Do you like him? Do you not like him? Because he kind of scares me.
He is. Coming off really just a pretty unimpressive year, I think. We've mentioned this a bunch of times because it was one of these rare moments of candor from a player, but he graded himself a D- at one point last year on his play. I mean, that's, if a guy's going to grade himself that way, that tells you something. And that, I think, sort of matched the eye test when, in that Iowa game, when the linebackers were, running around like chickens with their heads cut off, just totally out of place. He was one of the main offenders. He just didn't have a good year. He runs well. He ran a 4.5 3.40, something like that. So he's got the measurables, but it wasn't. He was kind of the poster child of the problem unit on the team last year, and I don't know. I don't know what you're basing it on if you're thinking, okay, well, it's gonna get way better next year. I mean, maybe there's something that obviously these teams have done, far more in-depth research and testing with all these guys than I have. But he's someone that there are a lot of guys that I would go with off of this defense before I picked him, I think.
Kyle, where are you on Baker?
I think you could flip a coin, and that's the scary part. Are you willing to invest that kind of time and money and resources, and you don't know what you're going to get in return? So that's going to lead you down. Is there coachability issues there? Because we knew when he stepped in due to injury, he was good. But then kind of in that off season, we heard his coach say, yeah, that's great, but he's not lining up right. And that was going to be the big thing, right? Last year that he was going to be, hey, now he's going to line up right. He's going to have a great year. And, kind of laid an egg to some extent. So I'm a hard pass. I'll be honest.
I'm with you. It just there's not a lot of reassurance. And which is strange considering the sophomore year he had, and you start thinking you're making the comparisons to Darren Lee, although maybe those comparisons don't help matters right now. But I can't do it. I've seen too much of not enough, basically. I think he's probably that about covers it in terms of Buckeyes who will likely be drafted. Where is Baker being projected at? I know early on it was early. Maybe I've seen him in the second round, third round, but I don't know if that's going to hold up. Have you seen lately, Kyle, where he's looking or where he's projecting?
It just depends on who you're into reading wise, but I as far as the value, probably fourth round would be my ceiling. That's just me. But obviously if you're drafting off of combine and athleticism, knowing that, hey, we play a huge amount of percentage of plays out of our sub packages, so he's going to be on the field and we want that speed. Maybe you go higher, but I don't know. The tape doesn't even support that. So
does Chris Worley bring more value with maybe his intangibles than Jerome Baker does with his tangibles?
For me or for...
Well, because I've seen him, I don't know that he's going to be drafted. I've seen some people say, you take him at the end of the draft, he's a good team guy, a special teams guy, has leadership qualities. Would you get more out of that than, like you said, the coin flip with Jerome Baker?
Yes, and because special teams willingness, I think he'll step to the front of that line, and I don't know that you're going to get that from Jerome Baker. I don't know how much he likes the game to be willing to do that, whereas Chris Worley, I think, could probably be the captain of special teams. So if you're going to take a late round flyer on him, your return on investment is going to be greater. So, I like Worley better than Baker. Absolutely.
I was pretty, surprised, disappointed in what Worley was running, because I think what he was like 4.7 something, 4.69, wasn't great, but he's a better outside linebacker than an inside linebacker, as we saw when he was out there for the Buckeyes. Marcus Baugh, tight end, he never really did much for me. Into Ohio State as a pass catcher. Kevin Wilson said last week, he played all year last year with a bad shoulder, so he wasn't the run blocker that he could have been. It doesn't look like, and I know this is not true, but it doesn't look like he's ever really worked out that much. He doesn't look like you would expect an Ohio State football player to look, and he came to Ohio State having done very little weightlifting and was just a big guy who relied on his athleticism. And that changed somewhat at Ohio State. He definitely matured because he had a lot of maturing to do. But Tom, I don't know that Marcus Baugh is an NFL player.
He certainly is a much more attractive prospect now than he would have been 2 years ago, just because, he, like you said, he did a lot of growing up, and Urban Meyer talked very openly about that, and Baugh talked about it as well. So he's certainly a more attractive prospect than he would have been a couple of years ago. It's just there's a lot of question marks there. Like you said, the run blocking last year, how much of that was the shoulder? We don't really know. He didn't put up huge pass catching numbers in the offense, but Ohio State generally doesn't throw to the tight end that much. So how much does that really mean? We don't really know. So yeah, I mean, if you could sign him as an undrafted free agent, like, yeah, sure, go ahead and take a flyer on him and see what you get. But I think there's just a lot of question marks there that, maybe it works out and he turns into a nice, even if he's just a nice second tight end for some team like that. Yeah, great. But I don't know how many teams are looking for, running 2 tight end sets all that frequently.
Kyle, where are you at on him?
Oh, undrafted free agent all day. We'll see if he makes it through camp. That's going to come down to his ability to block and his willingness to. I've always felt like he had issues lining those blocks up, hurt shoulder or not. From last year, how about the year before? There were still those issues. So I don't know that that's something that's just not a switch that you turn on.
Yeah.
And so now you're okay. So he's a big Y at the next level. Is he a wide tight end? And if that's the case, is he athletic enough? And does he have the consistent hands to do that position? So he's really limited in what he can provide. And that's going to be his biggest holdback.
The 2 other guys who were not invited to the combine, defensive lineman Tracy Sprinkle and Michael Hill. I think we all agree, or at least I agree with me, those guys are going undrafted. Tom, you any hope for those 2 guys?
I wouldn't anticipate it. If you're not invited to the combine, that's generally not a great sign. Michael Hill, was suspended at one point last year and really did almost nothing on the field once he came back. Sprinkle, I guess maybe, but I don't, he's not like a huge run plugger. He's not like a super quick defensive tackle. Like, he was a good, solid college defensive tackle, but I don't know how well he projects to the next level. I don't anticipate seeing either of those guys picked.
They are going to use their college degrees, correct, Kyle?
Hope so. Maybe give the Canadian football a try.
Moraine County haters.
Maybe bounce around a few training camps here and there, but yeah, I don't see them sticking around on a roster.
Which brings us, I believe, to the last Buckeye we have yet to talk about, and that is quarterback JT Barrett, who I haven't seen many people calling him a draft pick, in terms of even like the sixth or seventh round. So I don't know. Do you, Kyle? Do you think expect him to be drafted?
I do.
Yeah.
And this is without my rose-colored glasses because I'm a JT Barrett supporter from through and through. But the leadership, his experience, his ability to win, it's intriguing, and especially in a draft like this where so many quarterbacks are going to be drafted early. You're going to have a kind of a dry spell in the middle, and then teams are going to want to get that insurance pick, right? So somebody like Carolina, Philly, whoever drafts Baker Mayfield might want that backup insurance or at least a camp arm. So I think you see his name called in the 7th round.
There's so many compensatory picks as well. There's room for him in the draft, at least in my opinion, and obviously yours. Tom, are you the only one that says that he's never going to get drafted because he's terrible? Is that what you're saying?
I'm going to side with our listeners and say that teams should draft Dwayne Haskins or Joe Burrow instead. I know Haskins isn't technically eligible, but still, I think. No, I'm kidding. I think Barrett has the possibility. I don't. If you set an over under on the number of career passes that JT Barrett throws in the NFL, and you set it at 250, I'm probably betting the under. But he seems like the kind of guy that could have, a nice 5-year run as someone's number 2 or number 3 quarterback. He's a smart guy. He's got a lot of experience. I mean, that's one of those things that getting back to the analytics, guys who have a lot of college experience tend to be better pros than the guys who are like the 1-year wonder and then they come out and they're in the NFL. Guys who have a lot of college reps, that tends to bode better for someone's NFL prospects than, a comparable player with fewer college reps. So there's a lot of stuff there that you can make if you can, like Kyle said, throw a 7th round pick at him, maybe late 6th, but someone is going to pick him up, and he's going to be on someone's roster, I would guess, for next season, one way or the other.
I think the character alone is good for the team, but there's value there. I mean, like he's experienced. He's shown that he can control a huddle. Not that Ohio State huddles, but he commands a locker room, and not that you need a rookie to do that, but these are all qualities that winning teams can always use and losing teams need. And so that's where I come back to the Browns, and he's another guy that the Browns just to have him around Sam Darnold or Josh Allen or Baker Mayfield or Lamar Jackson at number 1,
Wait until he beats out Josh Allen for the starting job, though.
Okay, well, that brings us to the Browns then. Who do you think they're taking, Kyle, number 1 overall?
I hope Sam Darnold.
Tom, who are you going with?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would go with Darnold. I think Rosen and Darnold, I think, will probably both be pretty good pros, but I would say I would prefer Darnold at this point to Rosen.
Is it crazy that Shannon, go ahead and chime in. I'm sure you have an opinion. Who should the Browns take number 1 overall?
It doesn't matter because they could have the guy sit behind Tyrod Taylor, so I'm fine with whoever just as long as he doesn't play next year.
He has to play next year.
No.
Has to. I feel like Baker Mayfield is the best quarterback that I saw last year. We saw Baker Mayfield against the Buckeyes, and he had, he did whatever he wanted to against Ohio State. We saw Sam Darnold, and he made some incredible throws, but other than those 4 plays, those 4 incredible throws, I mean, there's bad throws. There's football is flopping around everywhere. I think this is a bad time to have the number 1 draft pick because I'm not really sold. I think I'm more sold, Tom, on Mayfield than any of the other quarterbacks, and I don't love him at number 1. Obviously, of those 4 guys or 5 guys, I mean, where are you?
Well, first of all, I think that if you're going to go with the straight comparison of Mayfield and Darnold against Ohio State last year, it's worth mentioning Mayfield was playing behind a way better offensive line than Darnold was. I mean, Darnold was running for his life most of the night, and an awful lot of quarterbacks are going to look like crap when they've got 2 defensive linemen in their face 2.5 seconds after the snap. So that's a little bit of a caveat on that. To me, I would go Darnold, Rosen, Mayfield, and then probably Lamar Jackson, and then Josh Allen. Like if Josh Allen is there in the 7th round, take a flyer on him. Like sure, if the Browns select Josh Allen in the 1st round, just burn the stadium to the ground, salt the earth where it stood, and just be done. Just move the franchise to Baltimore again. Like that's not going to work. Like there's. I mean, we talked about the analytics earlier. There are so many analytical measures that say like he will be like an unprecedented disaster. I mean, like the poor man's Jake Locker, basically, based on his college career completion percentages and, percentage of passes completed, 20 yards downfield and 40 yards downfield. Like there is almost no measure where he's not going to be a complete disaster. So yes, he looks great in shorts throwing the football hard, but no, that's not how you. If they pick Josh Allen number one, just move the franchise to Baltimore again.
But why are so many people so high on Josh Allen? That's what I don't understand.
Kyle?
Because he can throw the ball 82 yards.
In his shorts?
Honestly, I mean, he's got that high ceiling, right? Everybody loves that. And then if you compare that to a Baker Mayfield that's got the high floor, low ceiling, and you're looking at longevity, then you like Josh Allen. He's somebody that can win for you down the road, once he starts to understand the game a little more. He's not my favorite at 1. If he's your guy, take whoever else you want, and then take Josh Allen at 4. At least you can have some sort of pride walking away from the draft that you didn't get completely taken. So, as far as Sam Darnold, he's only 20. And so he's going to have a lot of that time to mature still. And if he can sit behind Tyrod Taylor for the year and understand the nuances.
Andrew Stanton.
Yeah. I guess. Is that a good thing?
I think he can't beat out Drew Stanton.
Right. So he's, my issues with Darnold were, and this comes from me watching the coaches film from Ohio State USC, is he was very good at the cover 3. When he saw that safety rolling, he would throw behind the safety every time. And a lot of his great throws were because of that. A lot of his sacks came when Ohio State went with the split safety look or kind of altered their coverage post-snap. He froze. And so he's got the ability to create outside the pocket, but that's not something you want a rookie doing every day. So he'll need the time, but I think he's got the better upside.
Somebody else who I'm not sold on, and I question myself on this, is Saquon Barkley, who does some things that I've never you haven't seen any other running back do since like Barry Sanders. But then there are times where he just gets completely obliterated in the backfield, and I get tired of the blame being always placed on the Penn State offensive line, because they're good enough to where he should have 100 yards or close to it every single game, and he shouldn't have all of these huge losses. And I just wonder, Tom, he has all of the physical attributes, but I get concerned about how often he gets tackled in the backfield, and the offensive lines may or may not be better in the NFL, depending on where he goes. The defensive lines definitely will be better. So even though he should be a success, I get concerned about how often he's tackled in the backfield.
Yeah, I mean, there's that, which is obviously a pretty big concern, that there were like whole games after he was crowned the Heisman winner in mid-October. There were whole games where you would watch and go, "Oh yeah, he's playing, right?" Like he would have, I think it was the Northwestern game. He had, there was like 1 or 2 plays where he did something and then just was kind of invisible the rest of the game. I don't love him as a draft prospect. Like, I mean, he's obviously incredibly talented. He's a very good player. He will be a good pro, but I don't know that he's a top 5 guy to me. I mean, the running backs in general in the NFL are being de-emphasized to a decent degree. And then you add on that you're not going to get a 12-year career out of this guy. You're going to have him for a few years, and then, the hits end up taking their toll, and kick returns are not as much of a thing in the NFL as I think they were. And with the kickoffs being de-emphasized at the college level, you got to wonder when that's going to perhaps trickle up to the NFL. So that could hurt his special teams value to some degree at some point. I mean, I wouldn't mind taking him, but I wouldn't take him at 4. If you can get him at 10 or 12, like, sure, but you probably aren't going to be able to get him at 10 or 12.
Played 6 games against Big Ten East opponents, rushed for 100 yards in just one of those games. That was Michigan. Kyle, are we? Where are you on Saquon Barkley? Are we maybe focused too much on the bad and not enough on the good?
Oh, absolutely not, because his good comes in obviously coming off the combine, everybody's going to love him because he put up a ridiculous combine, but just look at him. He's kind of built for that setting. So, but when you start looking at him between the tackles, he leaves a lot to be desired. And then if it's a passing league, he's a terrible pass blocker. So, difference between him and, say, Ronald Jones from USC, to me, that drop-off isn't that steep. So if you're somebody like the Browns, pick 33 or 35, go get Ronald Jones. You still get a very good running back who runs really hard downhill, and you still come out ahead. So I'll pass on Barkley at 4.
Yeah, 'cause against Indiana, 20 carries, 56 yards. Against Ohio State, 21 for 44. Michigan State, 14 for 63. Rutgers, 14 for 35. I mean,
that's a big rivalry game for them.
True. Rutgers, they got up for that one. So, I guess maybe we shouldn't place too much blame on Barkley there. But there's just, it's too boom or bust. And he has these highlights where it's almost like a dunk contest. You watch these guys and they're doing all of this acrobatic stuff, but you can't hit a 16-foot jumper. And I think, Barkley doesn't have necessarily a 16-foot jumper, and it limits what he can do. So I definitely take him later in the first, but at 1 or 4 for the Browns, I don't like it. Especially, I don't think there's a huge drop off between him and the next guy, if there's a drop off at all. And you can get running backs later on. I don't see it. I know people want to say like he's the best running back prospect since whoever, and even better than Ezekiel Elliott. And to me, Zeke always felt like a sure thing. Tom Barkley does not.
Yeah, I mean, how many games did Ezekiel Elliott have where he had basically rushed for nothing? I mean, the only one that's coming to mind immediately is that 2015 Michigan State game where A, he was in the hospital that week, and B, they forgot to hand him the football. Like I'm not coming up with all that many others that were, that I can think of that were like 20 carry, 50-yard games.
No, and I'm looking right now, and the only reason he had some in 2014 was early in the season. They didn't know they didn't know how to use everybody yet. But once they figured it out, then, he went on a tear. And if you remember, Ohio State won a national title. But that pretty much, those are the topics that I wanted to touch on with those two guys at the top of the draft. Tom, any other topics that you wanted to throw in there?
No, I don't think so. I think here's a question for Kyle. Quentin Nelson, the guard from Notre Dame, I have seen him like top 5 in mock drafts in some places. That, like, I know he's a very good player. That seems insane that you're going to draft an interior lineman like top 5, maybe even top 10. Is he legitimately going to go that high? And if so, is that a pick that's worth making, or is that like, you're drafting a generational kicker, you're picking Sebastian Janikowski, but you're doing it in the first round, so therefore it's kind of insane.
He's the generational player at that position. So people like to throw that term out with Saquon Barkley, but we heard it a couple years ago with Ezekiel Elliott. So as far as Quentin Nelson, absolutely, he'll go in the top 10 based on where the quarterbacks go. So, does he go 5 if Denver doesn't go quarterback? Who knows? But he'll likely be the first non-quarterback off the board. And that says a lot.
So you're saying Quentin Nelson is the Sebastian Janikowski of guards?
He's probably in better shape than Sebastian Janikowski, but yeah.
They look similar, I think.
Right? How sad is that?
Now I want to take a quick turn towards the 2019 draft because the Buckeyes are going to be well represented again. And I meant to look at as some of the other defensive linemen. But the defensive line class, the 2019 class, is going to be completely loaded with, Nick Bosa, Draymond Jones, Clemson guys, Rashawn Gary. It's going to be pretty ridiculous. But Kyle, Nick Bosa, does he have a chance to go? I know he has a chance to be the first one of those defensive linemen off the board. You think it's a good chance?
Oh, absolutely. I think he's a top 5 talent, especially when you factor in next year's quarterback class being likely one of the worst. So now you're gonna get back to normal. You're not gonna have 5 quarterbacks go in the top 10. So you're gonna get some really good players go early. So yeah, Nick Bosa, we've felt that he was better than his brother, and we see how that worked out for him. So absolutely, he's gonna go really high, and he's scheme versatile. He can play defensive end. He can go inside. He's going to be a slam dunk.
Tom, I'm interested to see what Draymond Jones does this year, because he came back to essentially improve his draft stock, and we'll get to see him more as a pass rusher and just all 3 downs type of guy. And I expect him to put a pretty good resume on film for the NFL this year.
Yeah, Urban Meyer a week or two ago talked about him being like the standout guy in spring. Like, he is very obviously, sounds like a man on a mission this year. Because he projected like maybe low first, early second round after last season. And so if he's coming back to be like a top 10, top 15 type pick. And you talked about how loaded this defensive line class is. You mentioned a whole bunch of guys, and you didn't mention Ed Oliver. Yeah. Like, that's how big, that's how good this defensive line class is next year. So I think he has a pretty good chance to have top 10 talent coming out of the draft, coming out of this season, with that line class being so loaded. I don't know if that will actually translate to being a top 10 pick or not, but he is poised to have really a pretty breakout season, because they're going to have a lot of opportunities for him to, if he's in that rushman package like they've talked about, if he can be, establish himself as a pass rusher this year as well, and not just a, first and second down kind of inside guy, and then they swap in just the 4 defensive ends on the third and long. If he can add that to his portfolio, I think that makes him a very, very attractive draft prospect.
Yeah, Kyle, we talked about the versatility with Jalen Holmes. I think we'll get to see that with Draymond Jones this year.
Yeah, and the more he plays defensive end, I think can only improve his stock. He obviously has the burst to do that, and edge rushing is a premium at the next level. So, yeah, it's going to be fun. And just seeing the fire that he showed getting called off the field against USC, I think that switch has been flipped as far as the leadership. He didn't want to come off the field, especially after he got to the quarterback. So, man on a mission, I think that's a great way to describe him.
I don't even know if we talked to him this spring, Tom. I don't remember, but he's definitely talking to him this winter. We talked to him for some reason. But yeah, he was. He talked about this is. It's impossible to not look at the NFL when you're an NFL draft, when you're an NFL prospect, and it's always on your mind. But you have to sort of compartmentalize your focus. It's like you can't get rid of it. So I guess you sort of use it. But yeah, Tom, from what we've seen, the focus, he's Urban Meyer talks the laser-like focus. He's got it this year.
Yeah, I don't think there's a question that he is a 5 in every way that Urban Meyer talks about guys being a 5. I don't think we did. You said that, and I was thinking back, and I don't think we did talk to him this spring. I think the only time we talked to him was in January when we talked to all the guys who had announced they were coming back. I remember talking to him then, and I don't think I didn't talk to him when we talked to the defensive linemen, which, looking back, maybe Caroline did, and I'm just not remembering it. But yeah, that is a little odd that we didn't talk to him. I hadn't thought
focused
about that. It's got to be it.
Kyle, are you with me on this? I think, and I don't know if I'm fully committed to this, but I'm committing to it now. Whoever starts at quarterback for the Buckeyes this year will not be there in 2019 because they will enter the NFL draft.
I agree because with Joe Burrow's Heisman, it's going to be hard to not enter the draft on that, ride that high horse in. So,
Tom, do you take offense to somebody winning Tate Martell's Heisman?
I mean, I'm assuming Tate just lets him hold it for like a picture or something. I don't know. I mean, Tate. The flaw in your question, Gerd, is that Tate Martell isn't draft eligible next year.
True.
So,
I question withdrawn. Go ahead.
To me, and I'm going to talk, and then I'm going to let the person who is actually knowledgeable about this stuff talk
Thank you.
about
I will
it.
talk about it.
Glad I finally get to talk today.
To me, I'll make my toss very clear. Don't worry. To me, Dwayne Haskins is the kind of guy who has that like rocket arm and the prototypical size where if he wins the starting job and if he has the kind of season that he could have, he's the kind of guy that could be that, top 15 type pick, even potentially the top quarterback off the board if it's a weak quarterback class. Burrow doesn't quite have the arm. He's more mobile, but Burrow doesn't seem like as much of an NFL quarterback as Haskins. Like if you're telling me that, asking me who's the next Ohio State quarterback who's going to be like the starting quarterback of a Super Bowl winning team, I would say Dwayne Haskins. He seems more like the kind of guy that is the leave early because you're going to get picked in the top half of the first round kind of quarterback, much more so than Joe Burrow. What do you think about that, Kyle?
I think Dwayne Haskins can lead a team to a Super Bowl after Joe Burrow leads a team to a national championship. We're all creatures of habit, right? Urban Meyer is, the poster child for being a creature of habit. I think it's just too much of a change to go all in on Dwayne Haskins in his mind. And he likes what Joe Burrow provides because he's had it for the last 25 years with JT Barrett. So
here's an idea.
They're both, Burrow's not going to be drafted in the top 15, but because he is limited, but I like what he can provide at the college level versus Haskins.
Tom, I have an idea. Tell me what you think. You let Joe Burrow start the season, all 12 games, regular season games, and then like you did in 2014, you completely switch, and then you bring in Haskins. And now defenses have to, you don't have Haskins tape out there. The defense is completely caught off guard. That's a pretty brilliant idea, right?
Yeah, there's no possible way that could possibly go
let's
wrong.
Go to
so
yeah, that's enough of that. Wouldn't it be so much?
I posted this.
Go ahead.
I posed this question on Twitter the other day. Is the narrative different if Austin Mack drops that ball against Michigan last year?
Probably. I mean, well, it depends. I mean, they ended up winning by 11, so he probably still leads them back. I mean, John O'Corn is still playing quarterback on the other side of the field. So, I mean, they probably still win, but, maybe it's 24-20 or 21-20 or, whatever it is. So, I mean, if you are the guy who came in cold off the bench and led them to victory in Ann Arbor, I think you're probably still hailed as the conquering hero, as they say up there. But I mean, that is certainly the single highlight that is, replaying on a loop inside everyone's head when they're pointing to Haskins as being the guy who should be the starter this year.
Cardale did that in 2014, but it was handing off. And I wonder if they win it without that throw, then because Cardale, and there weren't a lot of people on the Cardale Jones bandwagon after that game. It wasn't until obviously the Big Ten championship that people were a little bit more reassured. It's definitely an interesting question, and because how much of this 95% of it is fueled by that throw. The other 5% are fueled by the completion percentage and the run and the win. But yeah, speaking of Austin Mack and Ben Victor, are any of us? I think Tom, we've talked like one of those guys could end up leaving next year. I don't know who it's going to be. Obviously, it would have to be based on production. Kyle, do you think one of those two guys goes with the other four guys who are going to be leaving next year?
Possibly. I mean, it's going to depend on the quarterback.
Yeah.
I think we're still waiting on Ben Victor to put it all together consistently. We see glimpses of it, and it can be great. Maybe he needs Dwayne Haskins to make that move for him. If he's the quarterback, then Victor's going to have a great year. Mac, I think, will be solid regardless, but strikes me as a guy that maybe wants to stick around, maybe be a team captain, that sort of thing. So
we pretty much know that Mike Weber is leaving after this year. He started to show the home run potential at the end of last year, and the expectations are that he's going to continue that this year. I don't really see him like as a first-round guy. I thought Carlos Hyde would have been like a first-round guy, and I don't know that Mike Weber is better than that, but where are you? I know it's really super early, but where do you slot him next year?
Probably third, fourth round. I think he'll struggle in the sense that he's got to split carries. He obviously has a lot of film out already, and he does a lot of little things well, like pass blocking, he can catch out of the backfield, that sort of thing. But I don't know. He's just not he's not an exciting player. Like, he just gets it done.
Yeah. He's not the most durable guy either.
That may hold him back.
Injuries every single year of his career. I think that's also a concern. Tom, are you willing to predict any linebackers leaving early after this year?
I didn't have anyone who like jumped out to me as someone who was like for sure gonna leave early. I mean, Aaron Browning seems like the kind of guy that might be the next guy who does that, but he's not draft eligible next year. So, maybe Justin Hilliard puts it all together and goes. If he stays healthy and has a starting job all year, he's got he has the physical traits that could make him an attractive draft target. But that's dependent on one, him staying healthy, and two, how they divide up the playing time after Tough Borland comes back.
Because I always view it like if you're a starter and an upperclassman, you've got a decision to make. And, as we'll talk about on Friday's show, they don't know who their starters are yet at linebackers, so that makes it a little bit difficult to project. And we don't even know if, once they do have starters, there's still going to be a rotation. There's going to be more than three linebackers playing. Yeah, I don't have any. Like, it could be Keandre Jones, it could be Malik Harrison, it could be any of those juniors who start and are productive and play every snap. But it's entirely too early to even know. Al, are there any other first rounders on there? Maybe Kendall Sheffield. What are your thoughts on Kendall Sheffield first?
He's going to be the biggest riser in this next draft cycle, in my opinion. I thought he played really well against USC, and I think that extra practice time really did him wonders leading into that bowl game. So he's a fringe guy right now, just super athletic. He's got good size. It's got to refine a few things, but I think it's getting there. And so I'm really excited for the year he's about to have.
One of the guys I forgot about was Damon Webb, who has really surprised me with all of the positives. Not surprised me. I'm surprised to see so many other people having all of these positives to say about him, because he was the guy that got better every single game, every single year. And he doesn't have all of the physical tools. He reminds me of Kurt Coleman in that way, where teams always like to replace him, but he sticks around and he always plays. He makes plays, and I don't know. What are your thoughts on Damon Webb? I think it's been fun to watch him grow as a player and get better and become a guy who's going to be drafted.
Yeah, I'm a little bit concerned if it did take a couple years for the light to come on completely. Now he's going to have a change of scenery, a lot of life changes. How does he adapt to that, and how long will it take him to play at a high level wherever he does go? Or is it just a confidence issue, and he's there and he's fine wherever he's going to end up? So he's I don't know. I'm glad somebody else evaluated him for that our draft guide, because I have my own nightmares about him still. Yeah. But he's solid. I don't know that he'll ever be a All Pro or Pro Bowl caliber, but I think he could add depth.
Then getting back to the 2019, the guy who's replacing him, Jordan Fuller, this is going to be his second year as a starter, played very well at boundary safety last year, moves to field safety. Tom, do you think this is the last year we see him at Ohio State?
My question is how he's going to test, because he doesn't seem like a total burner. Right. I've never watched him run a 40. So is he going to be one of those guys whose combine measurements keep him from being as attractive a draft prospect as he seems like he should be, and therefore maybe makes him not as attractive as a draft, in terms of where he's going to get picked, and maybe keeps him here for another year after that. He seems like a smart guy. He's someone who always seems like he's in the right place. Like he made a lot of very big, touchdown saving plays last year, because he was the guy who, and I'm now talking myself into the fact that maybe he's faster than I was thinking, because he was running people down.
That's true,
and all that. So, I mean, that would be my question: is how he's going to test. I think he will be a pretty good player at the next level, but I don't know if some of his measurables might hold him back, at least in terms of being an early entry guy.
Kyle, how do you see Jordan Fuller?
Yeah, Tom nailed it. It's going to come down to how he tests. I think he's limited from a range standpoint to be a free safety at the next level. So now you're looking at, does he play near, in the box as a box safety closer to the line of scrimmage? Now you're starting to limit his scheme that he can fit in, is single high, cover 3 style, cover 1. So you're starting to really filter him down as you think through this. And so I think that'll keep him in those mid rounds if he does come out.
Is there Michael Jordan going into his third year as a starter? Interior guys leaving early, I don't think it happens a whole lot. But do you think this is his last year at Ohio State?
I hope not, for his sake, because I think he's got some development to do still. If I'm not mistaken, he was the weakest link on the line last year in terms of pressures allowed. And, that's a little bit concerning, especially with who he was surrounded with. So he was kind of afforded some help, I think, with Billy Price and Jamarco on either side of him. So I'd like to see him come back for his final year and improve upon some things. But in terms of run blocking, that he's solid, but I wouldn't put him on any list in terms of coming out early.
Do you think we those who watch him and see him all the time overvalue him because he's a 3-year starter, started as a freshman? All of this stuff must mean something, but really he's just a pretty good guard. And why would you leave early when you're just a pretty good guard?
Yeah, and have you seen improvement from year one to last year?
Yeah, he's always seemed like the same player. You're right.
Exactly. So how much improvement is there? I don't know. He seems really mellow. He's not a killer out there. Everybody likes. Yeah, but even just kind of looking to really, hurt people. He's not that guy out there. And I don't know. I think you need that at the NFL,
especially on the interior.
Absolutely.
The last guy I wanted to touch on is also on the interior. Demetrius Knox, going to be a fifth-year senior, has finally won a job this year by going out and winning the job rather than winning it by default through injury. Do you see him as an NFL prospect?
He's one of those guys I'd like to see more of. Just because he hasn't had the consistency on the field. So if he can put together some good film this year, then sure. But for right now, I don't see how he's going to translate to the next level in terms of being a commodity. He's a pretty good guard right now, right? And it's not like the guy. I'll be careful with how I say it because, obviously these guys are really good athletes, but, it's not like he beat out, returning first team all Big Ten or, you know what I mean? So, I'll wait and see on him.
Tom, you got anything else?
No, I think we covered pretty much all the guys who I think are most likely, most likely 2019 early entry kind of guys, or, I guess in Knox's case, it would be leaving right on time. But yeah, I think we pretty much got it covered.
Go ahead.
You got, as far as receiver wise, Johnny Dixon, Terry McLaurin, those types. But again, you're going to want to see more consistency out of both of those guys. And obviously it's nice to see Dixon healthy, but can you do it again? McLaurin, you want to see a little more consistency with his hands than that. And so, maybe the changing quarterback will help him. But we'll see.
And KJ Hill has already pretty much said this is his last year, even though he has another year of eligibility remaining. And I would expect him to leave with Campbell and Dixon and McLaurin. Campbell's a guy who should light up the combine until he's running back, the 52 yards or 53 yards catching the footballs back and forth. And that's good. That's going to be, I think,
the gauntlet drill.
That's going to be the make or break for him, I think. But he's got everything else in terms of size, speed, athleticism. It's the hands that is going to be the difference for him, I think.
And here I am going to talk out of both sides of my mouth, but if Haskins can put the ball where it's supposed to be on time, I think that's going to help these guys quite a bit, confidence-wise. And so maybe that'll be the little boost over the top here for some of these guys heading into the draft. But Team Burrow.
And one last thing for me, and it will determine whether or not Tom lets you back on the show, Kyle.
All right.
Do you think Tate Martell, what will he do first? Throw a touchdown in the NFL or catch a touchdown in the NFL?
Is he playing like a video game NFL or an actual game?
Actual.
Thanks for joining us, Kyle.
All right. No, he's a runner. I mean, that's his thing. If he's gonna get on the field this year, it's gonna be because he's so good at the read option, and he's just a really good decision maker. And he translates that when he throws the ball. Is he equally as good of a decision maker? Is he durable? Can he play a whole season? So those are things I'm waiting to see. Excited for him. He's an electric player. We saw a little bit of that in the spring game before the referees whistled him down. But he'll be a good backup this year, and I'll wait and see.
And might be the starting quarterback in 2019.
Could he be like a Denard Robinson type in the NFL, maybe? Is that sort of where you see him maybe fitting?
Man, that's a bad comp. That was the guy that I was shocked was even in the NFL for as long as he is. So It could be. I mean, you're saying just switch him to receiver, like a slot guy?
Yeah, I mean, get him out in space and, see if you can make people miss. I mean, that type of role, not necessarily like that type of career arc, but
right.
Maybe just shift him out there and let him, because I mean, from what we've seen, it certainly doesn't look like he's going to make his living throwing the football
right
after he leaves Columbus.
It could be. So we'll wait and see what some of these other quarterbacks come in. If they end up making that switch, we're going to have I think a mass exodus from the H-back position with McCall and some of these guys leaving. I think McCall leaves.
Really? After this year?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's my flyer. This one's free of charge, guys. But yeah, I think he's going to have a great year. I think he's finally in the spot. I think he's more dynamic than KJ Hill.
Wow.
And I think Paris stays, he's going to get his touches. But I think DeMario just says, you know what, guys, it's been fun, but I'm out.
And he's one of those guys that once he's finally healthy, that's why, I thought maybe Johnny Dixon might go because he was finally healthy, and you got to get while the getting's good, like Marshawn Lattimore did. That's an interesting one. We'll have to watch on that one. As far as like Tate Martell, I could see a Julian Edelman type of thing where, he was the quarterback at Kent State and then gets drafted by, I believe the Patriots drafted him with the intention of moving him to receiver. Maybe they do that. Although Bill Belichick won't be there by then. He's going to retire pretty soon, I would think, which is probably how they kept Josh McDaniels around. Am I correct? That's right?
Sorry, I was daydreaming about Martell catching a pass from Josh Allen.
82 yards in the air. All right. That'll do it for this show. Thanks, Kyle Morgan, for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Check him out on Twitter at No Huddle Scouts. Thanks, as always, to Shannon for being pretty quiet this time. This is nice.
Watch the 5-star reviews pour in.
That's what I'm hoping for you guys.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We will have a Friday show talking about the end of spring ball, what we learned, what we didn't. Make sure to check out the rest of the shows on the Ozone Radio Network. You can find them all on iTunes. You can find them all at theozone.net, and give us a listen, and we will talk to you later.
Tomorrow's alright. We could steal a car and leave tonight.